Looks like we're live. Welcome,
Alive.
everybody. Yeah, Paul's live. I'm live. Looks like we've got a bunch of guys signing in. Thanks, everybody, for turning out today for this webinar with the Elk Nut. Thank you, Paul, for being available to share your elk calling insights with us tonight.
Hey, my pleasure, as always.
We love doing this. It's fun to get one of these in before the season starts. We wanted to dive right in, but thank a sponsor real quick. Kevin at Matrix Targets has been kind enough to donate one of his excellent targets, archery targets, to this webinar that we'll give away at the end of the show. To get entered into that giveaway, we have a post on the Elk Nut app Instagram page where if you follow Matrix Targets, follow Elk Nut Outdoors, then you'll be entered into to win that target. We're going to announce the winner at the end of this webinar. So if you want to jump on Instagram at some point, get entered if you haven't already. But with no further ado, we're just going to jump right in here, Paul. So I'll watch the chat as we have questions come in, and there's a good segue. Paul, I can feed those to you, but I'll just turn it over to you, and maybe you can let us know how you're getting started on your hunt this year, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm actually looking really forward to hunting this early season, and I'm sure a lot of guys are. I mean, after you wait all year, September goes pretty fast. And, in years past, my son and I, we really waited for like the 10th on before we really got serious about elk hunting, because we like to get them vocal and, play our game. But it seems in the last few years, I've been creeping in towards hunting the early season because there's a lot of advantages to it. And I bet a lot of guys out there are seeing the same, positive reaction from the elk. People haven't messed with them much. Bulls are very susceptible to being called. They may not make a lot of sounds on their own or bugle much, but doesn't mean they won't come in. And so that's some of the stuff we've been dialing in here in the last few years, and this year is going to be the same. I'm looking forward. I'm heading out on Monday, and I'm looking forward to having some good battles with the elk. There's no doubt about it. Hunting over the counter, you're going to have some exchanges. You're going to have other hunters, but it's okay. Elk hunting isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be tough. It's supposed to be challenging. But I know my number one thought process for me is the cow call will stay in the truck. I could care less about it. It's going to be my bugle. It's going to be my bull sounds. And that's really how I get dialed in. And that's what I'm practicing a lot right now. I'm trying to get honed in my mind mentally, not just physically, and practicing and making sounds, but giving believable tones for that time frame of the year. And you'll notice a lot of bulls at this time will give a lot of moans and groans and not a lot of a whole bunch of real full bugles unless something was presented to them or in their area that forced them to do so. But in most cases, you're going to see bulls are more nonchalant. But at the same time, if you get in their area where they've called this their domain at this time of year, and you start advertising or displaying yourself as another bull in their area, most of them come sneaking in. They don't say a lot. That doesn't mean they won't ever bugle, and usually if you do get a bugle at that time of year, like early on, they're still telling you to get out of there. They're not welcoming you. They're telling you to move on. This is their spot. So by continuing on like that and displaying and advertising, it is a really fun game. And you can get them slipping in. So, from my standpoint, that's one of my strong suits for going in on the early season. So if any of you guys are going to do that, you might consider something like that. And I know I'm kind of breezing through it, but if anybody has any questions on, thoughts on how you do it or why you do it, it is on the app. You can go right into the advertising display sequence, and I get pretty dialed in there in the woods with it. Taylor and I are both out there, and it has some really good information. But if anybody does have some thoughts on that right now, I'd be happy to, answer any questions. No problem.
We do have a question, Paul, that's kind of related. Our buddy David Brooks, he's asking a little bit about early season, but wondering if there may be a place for the slow play at all. Do you find opportunities to use that sequence in the early season?
Yeah, I do. One of the things that you have to understand when we say early season, we're usually talking from like our season starts August the 30th. I know some start earlier than that. So from August the 30th to me till like September 8th, even 9th, that's early season. Now, others can have a different definition. So what? It doesn't really matter. We're all really right there within that time frame. And the reason we call it early season, kind of pre-rut times, is because there's really not a lot of bugling action. Yeah, you might have some bugling where you're at and 5 miles away, somebody hasn't heard a thing all day or for 2 or 3 days. And then all of a sudden it reverses. They're hearing them and you're hearing nothing. This is kind of early season stuff, as some of the older cows will come in first, come into estrus first, but they're sporadic. That's why it's not called peak rut. Peak rut is much more closer to like the 15th through the 25th. That's your peak bugling, your peak rutting, your peak cows coming into estrus. So that means the majority of the cows are coming in at that time, not just one lingering here and there. And so from that standpoint, yes. And what was his point again?
So his point was, is there a place for the slow play in the early
the slow
season?
play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really forgetful, but not that forgetful, but I get rattling on. But whether you're going to do, I was thinking about this earlier today, and I think about it a lot over the years, actually. But when you take things like the breeding sequence and cold calling and the slow play and advertising display, those are my starting points. When I say I'm going to do this tactic or sequence, that's where I'm starting. Sometimes as things develop and a bull engages, then all of a sudden I'm switching gears and moving over into another tactic and bringing it on board. In other words, let's say I'm doing the slow play to the gentleman that asked, and I'm going through it, and all of a sudden the bull's getting riled up. Well, I know that in time, as I play this sequence out, I am probably going to end up going to the full send challenge because I got this bull engaging and he's getting aggressive. He's getting dramatic over this situation. So I'm not just going to stay with the slow play or play it too slow. I am going to start ramping it up because he is. And the way I actually do that, just to help this guy appreciate him further. So let's say I'm going to the slow play. I started with some cow sounds. I intervene a little bit with the bull sounds, just like it shows on the video there. But then after 5 or 6 minutes, a bull sounds off. And he sounds off and he's 350 yards away, whatever. He's not on top of me. On top of me, meaning he's 125 or closer. So he's beyond that. Maybe he's even a quarter mile away. That's fine with me. I don't care. I'm still going to stay right there. And I'm going to continue through my sequence. I'm not going to answer him. Don't answer that bull. It's the same as if you were advertising or cold calling. When they're that kind of distance, don't answer them. Just keep going through your sequence. And the next thing you know, he may bugle again. In most cases, he does because he already started. He's closer. And you just keep going. Ignore him. Don't answer him. Just ignore him because he's telling you to get out of there. He doesn't want you in the area that he has called his own. This is his own territory right now for the next couple of weeks. It's his. He doesn't want to share it with another bull or a bull with a little group. And so as he gets closer, and now he's halfway, maybe he's 200 yards, now I start engaging. But prior to that, nothing. He's too far away. I don't care. I'm continuing on doing my own thing. But all this has taken, we're talking 3, 7, 8 minutes. This isn't a half-hour thing. It happens pretty quick. But once he starts getting in to where I figure, God, this bull's 200 yards away, approximately, I now will engage, and I usually will just kind of go and let him know to back off. And if he bugles again, I keep going with my routine. I'm repeating it over and over, but I'm preparing myself mentally. I know I'm going to have to engage him a little bit more as soon as he starts creeping in more. And when he does, he usually will bugle again. See, he's already been engaging several times. And as soon as he gets into that 150-yard range, I will start now going with some bugles. I will now throw some more bugles out to let him know to stay back. But once he hits that 125, it's full send challenge all the way. I've already got him worked up. I'm not leaving. That's when I'm going to probably hit him with a couple of 2 or 3 hard pants, a solid nervous grunt, and a scream right behind it. And if you don't want to do the pants, you don't have to. I enjoy doing that. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But I just love kind of going and then hitting him with that nervous grunt and a scream. And usually, you better be ready. I don't care if it's September 1st or August 31st, because the minute you get him to that distance, that 125 or inside of it, and you hit him with that, but do you notice how I went from the slow play or breeding sequence or advertising, and then I had to switch gears because of the attitude of the bull. You see, and so that is when I'm adjusting myself. Other times, they just come sneaking in all the way early season like that with the slow play and hardly make a peep, nothing. But they keep coming and coming and coming. And that's why I tell you guys, when you're given any of those sequences, continue to repeat it. When you get to the end, don't go, oh, okay, that's it. He didn't come. Let's go. No way. He is coming. He's just slipping in silent. He wants to size you up. He doesn't know who you are. So remember, no matter what the sequences you're using at that time, and the only reason I would even go to the slow play at that time would be because I heard a bull bugle and he was at a distance and maybe he bugled again. He's showing a little bit of aggressiveness. And so, he's getting worked up. He knows the breeding season is right upon him. But when you got bulls that are hanging around, maybe you have them on a camera or you just know they're in the area, I'm going right to the advertising. The advertising at this time of year is what kicks their butt. I just to give you an example, how calling can work. My daughter-in-law has a cow tag right now with the muzzleloader, and I went out with my son on August. I went to 16th. Yeah, August 16th, which was 9 days ago. And we had went in about a mile and a half and hadn't seen nothing, heard nothing. And I'm like everybody else. I was walking around trying to get some interaction and something to answer. So I'm kind of, hoping, because I'm not really trying to call bulls. I'm trying to find some cows. We're doing some setups and calling, nothing. And we're getting into much sign. And after a few minutes of it, I told my son, I said, we got to find these elk. That's the first thing we got to do. Nothing's really coming in, but we're in an area we thought they could be within earshot, and maybe they come sneaking in. So I went straight to how a cow would give kind of a regathering mew to a bugle, and she's looking for the other elk. And so I went like this. I went. And instantly, about a quarter mile, maybe a little further, a bull just screamed a bugle out. Just on August the 16th. Didn't even know anything was up there. And I looked at him. I went, all right, that's where they're at right there. Because elk are herd animals, so we know there was other elk. And just giving you an example, just right there, how fast the gear was changed and how I got more creative with my calling, because one thing wasn't really getting it done. And so I went with, hey, I'm kind of separated from the group. Where are you guys? I know there's elk out here somewhere. And that's what the elk will do. That's what a cow will do. And you notice how I went like 2 or 3 of those high pitches. How many times do you ever hear a bull do that? Like none. I've done this for over 40 years. I don't hear bulls do that. But cows do it, and I've watched them do it. And so when I did that, what do you think that bull sounded off for? Because he knew there was a cow down there, that she was looking for the group, looking for assistance. Where are you guys? And he answered to give it away his location. He didn't come running down to me over a quarter mile away or so in the timber. He's just letting her know where they're at. So I'm just showing you how, sometimes you have to readjust yourself for the situation. And I've done this in September the 20s. Where I can't find them and the bugle isn't getting anything done. And I go right to that cow bugle like that high pitch regathering sound, and I'll get an instant answer so many times. It gives me an idea that now I need to get over there. Forget the cow sound after that. Generally, I will usually go in there and advertise because I know the bull is there and he is not going to go for another bull sharing his area. If I can get within that 200-yard range, I don't usually need to get much closer than that. And he will come to check you out. The later in the season, the more active he can be through bugles. But anyway, I know we're kind of getting carried away right there with it, but I'm just trying to show you guys, don't just stick to one thing and be one-dimensional out there. Sometimes you got to switch gears and use your head and try to get something to develop so you have something to work with.
Yep. So we have a detailed question from Dave Adams that plays off of that. So his question is, whether you can tell the difference between a bull being defensive over his territory versus being defensive over maybe a hot cow, potentially a hot cow. And are there sounds that a bull will make in one situation that he might not make in the other, or vice versa, kind of between defending his territory and defending a hot cow?
That's kind of grasping for straws there. There's nobody can tell that. I don't, I mean, anybody can say they can. So what you look for is signs. When a bull's being defensive over his territory, like I've killed bulls that were being defensive on their territory prior to September the 5th. And if you didn't know better, you would think they were defending the world. They were just screaming, going. And it could have been either the territory or the cows, or it could have been both. But I can tell on several of the bulls that we've killed that it was more territorial, not the cow was in heat. It was he did not like us right there in his area. And generally, when you have a cow that's coming into heat, don't you think other bulls know it? Absolutely. They're not that stupid. There's enough satellites around that can smell that pheromone getting into the air of a cow elk, and they know there's a hot one coming into estrus or in estrus. So when you have another bull bugling the area, and this is where maybe he's being defensive, and then you enter the arena a couple hundred yards away, and he's screaming at you because there's no doubt there's a hot cow there. But when it's just you and him, and there's no other bulls, no other sounds coming from anywhere, and he's being very defensive with you, and his defensiveness and his aggressive attitude can get very dramatic. It can start here and then go here, 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 and so can you. And so those are the things I would look for more than anything. No other bulls bugling the area. 9 times out of 10, there is no hot cow there. He's being defensive for the spot that you're encroaching on. He's not even defending the cows. There's nothing in heat. He's really not a big deal. He's not worried about losing them. No bull wants a cow that's not in heat. They'll walk right around them and they could care less. But you get them in heat and it's a game changer. But the point being right there is that I listen for other audibles of something else out there. And if there's not, I love that. Because most of the time when it's one-on-one, you don't really have the cows between you very often. So I can get in closer and not worry about being busted by cows or spikes that are between us. And when there's a couple other bulls and there's a cow in heat, it seems like it's a mess. It's chaos in there, and the cows are moving everywhere. Because the bulls are trying to get at them. And so, you have more interaction there, and you have to read that situation for what it is. If you can get to the herd bull at that time, you'd be very fortunate to pull them out of there because the satellites are there too. But that's why I love the early season. Prior, in most cases, most areas, that the cows aren't really coming into heat yet, but you can still work those mature bulls by getting in their area, into their bedding area. And that's what I try to do. I try to get, everybody knows that. I've talked like that for 25 years. Get into their bedding area. Anytime you hear a bull bugle after 8:30, 9:30, some areas are different. The heavier timber countries, they bed earlier than the more open or semi-open. They usually will bed a little bit later, 9:30. But in those timbered areas, it's not a problem to get them into their bedding area at 8:30 in the morning because they feed, bed, and water all within earshot of each one of those destinations. Yeah, they're right there. So once I get in there, I already know they're not going to like me being in there, this bull. And so I am going to go ahead and display and display and display, and no cow sounds. I could care less about a cow sound. They do too. You can throw them in if you want, but it isn't going to get him there any quicker, not whatsoever. So, what I try to do is I do what works. If it was all cow sounds, guys, I'd be doing cow sounds. Believe me, that's what I'm going to do. And if it was both that was doing it all the time, that's what I'm going to do. But it's the bull sounds. It's the bull sounds that are getting them to come to you because they don't want you there. And they're not going to go crazy over a cow sound when they haven't smelled estrus from a cow in 11 months. Nothing. And so because they see a cow or hear a cow, it doesn't mean squat to them. But the minute they get that estrus in their nose, that pheromone that hits the air currents, they're done. Once they smell that, and now when they hear cows unfamiliar with in their area, they definitely want to scent check them because they've already got it, and now they're getting excited over everything that could be a possibility of a hot cow coming around them. So they want to scent check it, and so do the satellites. You see, that's different when we're in that type of an atmosphere as opposed to early season. You still have a lot of bachelor groups. And believe it or not, that bull had about 6 cows on the 16th of this year.
Wow.
So I see a lot of potential. I can't wait to get out there. Wednesday's opening morning. I'm going up Monday and getting some things dialed in and checking some stuff out because I know my areas pretty well. And so I am going into an area that I'm familiar with. But other than that, consider those thoughts for your hunt this year.
Yeah, those are good thoughts, Paul. So a couple of questions coming in about full moon, timing of the rut. How closely are you paying attention to that? And I think one attendee wanted to know kind of what you thought would happen in terms of timing of the rut this year.
Well, nearly 40 years of it has never changed. Been the same every time. For guys that say, oh, it was early this year and early last year, I find out those guys haven't even hunted elk 10 years. And that's their problem is they haven't been out there enough. But you talk to us guys that have been out there for 40 plus years hunting elk, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to hear the same thing from Jason and Dirk and Corey. You're just going to hear the same thing. I'm telling you right now, they're hitting the time of the rut is about the same. There's always years when we go out there and it's September the 1st and they are screaming. And then you'll get 5 years in a row, there's nothing. So what? A couple cows came in heat and you were in the right area. It's like I said earlier, you'll go in other areas and there ain't nothing going on. You happen to be in the right spot. So a few cows came in your general vicinity. But come the September 15th through the 25th, it is crazy. Those elk are going crazy for the most part, unless you're hunting some severely pressured areas and they're really getting hammered. So you got to go where the elk are because they got pushed out of there. But my point is that 15th through the 25th is always crazy. Yeah, you can be in areas when they're coming in October the 10th and 15th as well. I understand, but nothing like the 15th or the 25th. And this is over a longevity period of time. So when you start seeing a complete picture of it on a large scale, you can always bank on those times as far as the rut really, really picking up. And we know the equinox hits usually between the 21st, 23rd, almost every year. It's right in there. And as far as the full moon goes, because that was part of the question, that is without a doubt my favorite time to elk hunt, without question. And this is especially so once the full moon hits from the 10th on. And that's because that's when the cows really start ramping it up and coming in heat, whether they want to or not. And whether the bulls and whether cows, you listen to all this stuff on the internet, and let's clear a couple of thoughts real fast. Guys will say when it's a full moon, the cows will be bred or be more active during midnight, during the dark hours. But when a cow comes into estrus, she's into estrus anywhere from 12, 15, 16 hours. Now, do you think those cows can dictate when they were going to come into estrus? Are they now God all of a sudden? No. I mean, for people to throw this out there, and you hear it all the time on the internet, they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, they were out there and they could hear elk going, and then come morning, they didn't hear much at all. But then you find out in other areas, they were screaming all morning because you were in an area when that cow may have come in at 7, 8 o'clock at night and they were done by 7, 8 in the morning. They only stay in for so many hours. And maybe it's only one cow that came in. Wow. Maybe it was two. But peak rut means there's 30 of them coming in, 50 of them, 100. You see, it's a totally different thing. So when you start thinking about full moon, I love the full moon, because of the fact that bulls will bugle a lot more during the full moon. They can see better. They're still out. And the reason I like it from the 10th on is because the cows are coming in and out, in and out, in and out, not just one here or there. And so they get very vocal. And so I just want to know where they're at. That's all I care about. When I get out there and I'm bugling, I'm trying to locate. I'm not trying to call them to me at first. I'm trying to find them. And once I find them, then I get in there and make my move. If I can, by all means, I'm going to follow them without much calling to the bedding area because they're vocal enough. And that's what I'm doing. Once I get them to where they want to be, that's where I set up, call them in, and kill them. And the full moon allows me that luxury because they're more vocal during a full moon from the 10th on. Now, if the full moon came August 30th and the 1st, it doesn't mean you won't hear them bugle, but it's nothing like when the rut picks up. The rut trumps non-rut any day of the week. And when you combine the full moon with it, it is money. My son and I, over 5 dozen bulls, and I can tell you, we have taken more during the full moon without a doubt than any other time, because they're easier to find the bulls, way easier. They're so much more vocal because of the fact that they can see real well at night, and they're much more active. And again, this is usually from the 10th on. So those are the kind of things I sink my teeth into. I don't need to go read a book or read a magazine or look it up on the internet. I'm going by past experience and positive results.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. So Nate Burlingame is asking about kind of the waiting time after sequences. So maybe you set up for an advertising sequence, or maybe you do a cow party. How much time do you recommend waiting after you finish a sequence? And are there other sequences where you feel like that waiting period is really important?
Well, they're always important, but it's easy for us hunters to get bored. It's just like, when I was after calling just this year, you get antsy because you're really not seeing a lot of sign, but you're setting up and trolling. I call it trolling for elk when you're doing a sequence or a tactic where you're set up, but you're not sure if there's elk in the area. And the reason that I still do it like that is because you can pull elk from a long way. You could be a half a mile or more from them, and it'll pull them over to you. And you may not be in any elk sign, but it's half a mile up, there's a lot of elk sign. See, so that's why I like doing it like that. But it's more advantageous, obviously, to do it when you're in fresh elk sign or you heard a bugle. But when I know the elk are there, yes, there is a method to my madness here. And what I'm saying is that when I know they're there because of the sign or I heard something, I will just stay there. I won't go anywhere. Not until they see me or smell me accidentally. I'm not going anywhere, even if it means it's an hour. I know they're there. I know they're going to come. Some elk react much faster to calling than others. If you can get them to vocalize it all, and I mean cow calls, anything, then you can ask them to come over your way. And that's what I generally will do when I know I'm in the sign right there. It's the same as when you're working the cow party. In the cow party, I would never be there less than 45 minutes, not anything less. When you're doing slow plays and stuff, if you don't know elk are around and you're just trolling, hoping for the best, I probably wouldn't put more than 20 minutes in it, to be honest with you, because it's a coin flip. I don't even know if there's anything in the area. I haven't seen anything. I haven't heard anything. I could be advertising. I could do the breeding sequence. I could do the slow play. I could do all kinds of things. But I'm just, shooting at the hip, hoping, hey, there is something around there. And they're coming in now. Okay. So I'm not going to stay as long. But when I know the elk are there, I remember when we did the webinar with Born and Raised, and what's his name? The tall
Cody.
guy. Cody. Remember Cody and I were talking and on that webinar, and we were in agreement 100%. And we almost laughed about it because it's so true, is that a lot of times when you know an elk is there and you're calling and calling and calling and they're not saying nothing, we both looked at each other. I remember that day too. It was over a year ago. And I said, and we both said at the same time, that elk is coming. And he's so right. He really is. Cody was spot on. That's been my experience over the years too. When you're calling and you know they're there and they're not saying anything, they're on their way in. They're just sneaking in to size you up. And so you got to be very patient and very focused. There's none of this rooting through your pack and getting a drink of water and moving around and playing with your hat and turning around and talking to your buddy. Because I'll tell you what, if you start doing that in your setup and an elk is slipping in and they see a movement, they see anything that doesn't resemble the species, immediately they get nervous. They're just like, lock up. Something's over there, and that's not an elk. So they catch your movement. Maybe they can't see your full body figure, but they're seeing something that causes suspicion. And that's what makes them go around and get the wind in their favor, whereas opposed to that, they were coming straight at you. And the cow party has always been very, very productive. It just brings elk straight at you. They could care less about the wind unless you raise suspicion in their minds through both calling or through movement. So you got to eliminate those things, and you'll see most of the elk come in. Sometimes the wind does switch on you and there's nothing you can do. And that happens the longer you sit in one spot. So those are things that are of concern. When I'm doing a setup, I've been in setups and it's irrelevant of what the calling was. But sometimes I have to ramp it up really fast because I can feel the wind starting to swirl. So I got to make something happen quick. And so I get extremely aggressive. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I back out and get out of there because the wind's going to blow me out of there and I'm not going to have anything to be dealing with. So, I play with a lot of those things in my mind for the time of the morning. And I can tell you right now, we kill 90 5% of our elk before noon. And it's because we hunt those bedding areas. And I think between my son and I, we've killed 3 elk after 1 o'clock in the afternoon because we don't hunt evenings, hardly ever. We just don't. We use it more for scouting or glassing or going to certain areas, just checking things out, because we take most of all of our elk are actually, by far the majority are taken before 11 o'clock, and it's in their bedding area. But doesn't mean you shouldn't be hunting the rest of the day. But the winds can swirl. That's why I don't like getting on water or wallows or 1 or 2 or 3, and you think this looks great. The wind's going everywhere. And if your scent goes for 1 second in the direction where an elk may be, they vacate the area. You can go sit that thing for 10 more days and they ain't coming back. Once you blow their area, especially their bedding area, and with your scent, and you were not aware of it, they're out of there. Move. You might as well just go hunt another area. So don't just keep thinking they're going to come back because you saw them on a trail cam and you sat there. But you can't let that wind burn you. You can't let it happen, or you will blow them out of that zip code. They're out of there. So, when you take things into consideration like that, we're talking usually no more than 45 minutes in a setup. Only 15, 20 minutes if I'm trolling for elk, because I don't know if they're really there or not. I'm just hoping something happens. Like the elk on the 16th, I said, I could have sat there calling, but as soon as I hit the cow bugles, they answered and they were over there. So that's where we went. Now we're willing to spend more time there for calling or whatever. So you see, you have to read the situation you're dealing with and then act accordingly. There's a lot of it's just common sense. If they're there, keep waiting. Take the time. That cover. Yeah, look at the video that Taylor and I did on setups, and look how tight we have a setup and what we're using for cover. You're going to see it on the app, on the pro version of the app, how we set up. I think we did 3 different ones. And then Taylor tells a really good story of a setup he was actually in and with his buddy and what happened as the elk was coming. And so setups are so important. So hopefully you'll be able to gain some insight from those videos as well.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That was my one moment of fame. So we got a question from Mark Lauber about how to deal with hunting pressure from other hunters in over-the-counter areas. How do you get away from other hunters? How do you deal with elk that are getting called to a lot? I know there's a lot of different ways that you could go with that, but what are your thoughts on hunting pressure?
That's my kind of hunting. And this is why I do that. I hunt pressured areas, and I've said it before. I'll say it again because of the question. I do it because it's a challenge, and I do it because I want other people to know that it can be done. You can still get elk in. You just have to be a little smarter than the average bear out there. When I know there's other hunters in an area, I'm not going to go into the area that I know they're going to hear me or I'm going to hear them. I just don't do it. I avoid them completely. I don't care if there's a group of elk over there. I could care less. There's other elk. I'm not going to go in there and set up and try to call when I know hunters are going to come sneaking in, or they're going to set up and call, or something of that nature. And the way I avoid this, that's part of the question. The way I avoid this is not going to the areas that have easy access. So if I see a trailhead on my phone or on my paper map, and there's another trailhead over here that's a mile away, mile and a half, whatever it is, there's a lot of country between those, and it's usually not flat when you're hunting timbered country. And that's what really we're talking about, because we're talking about calling. If I'm hunting more like when I did in Arizona, some of the country in Wyoming, and it's much more open and vast and you can glass, I don't do nowhere near the calling in those types of areas, because the glass can do the calling for you. That's what calling is: location. Glassing, spotting scope, that's location. You're finding, then you get over there. You don't start calling from where you binoed them. I mean, you shouldn't. If you're doing that, you're too open over there and they don't see anything. So when we're talking calling situations, we're talking about cover. There's cover, undulation, mountains, benches, rocks, brush. They can't see us, we can't see them. And so we're looking for them, at that time. But to hunt that kind of country and call for them, all we're trying to do is locate, and then we'll move in. And what was that guy's question again? Just so I can get it exact.
Yeah, sorry, I got a little sidetracked there responding to a comment. But his question was just, how do you deal with hunter pressure from other OTC hunters in your area?
Yeah, and that's pretty it. So pretty much it. So what I do is when I find these areas that have a gated road or a road that you're not supposed to drive on, because a lot of them, they just have signs. Some have gates, and I try to find the in-between areas. So that's what my phone is for. I use Basemap. I absolutely love Basemap. It's so clear. I've had other ones, but this, to me, and no, Basemap doesn't give it to me. I buy it. So I'm not trying to promote it. I'm just letting you know what I use, because I know someone's going to ask me that after this is over if I don't say what it is. So I'm using Basemap because of the clarity, and I think it's just amazing. And by finding the areas that when people walk up a trail here, or they walk up a trail there, or drive a road, I'm looking for those areas in between that where people will call and walk on these access areas where the elk can't hear them. They get pushed to these spots. They get pushed to these little secluded spots. And some of these are only a half a mile off the road. Some of them maybe a quarter mile from a trail, because it drops down, comes up over another mountain, and there's a little valley of stuff. And the next trail is way over to your left. So there's these little spots that the elk can't hear you and you can't hear the elk. So what I do on my phone is I look for those areas. And I like it when I can find water in the vicinity within a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile from it or closer. And so I find those little secluded areas in there that if I was an elk and I was being pressured, this is what I seek out. And I leave all the hunters. They don't go in there because they don't hear anything. They don't even know they're there. So I find all these little spots. And I mean, in my areas I hunt, I have over 40 of them that I'm aware of. And so I'm always dancing around trying to go to this spot or that spot or that spot, because there's not elk in every one of them. But I will find them. And I'm going to find them with this right here every single time. I don't use anything else. I don't glass. I hardly ever even carry binos in the woods. I hunt timber. I don't even care. They're just extra weight. And people ask me that all the time. And I would say in a year of hunting 24, 25 days generally, outside of last year, I might have binos on once or twice. That's it. I carry nothing. All I do is I got that bugle, my bugle and my reeds. That is all I need. Anything where I can't see, I have a rangefinder. So I have a 7-power rangefinder, a Leica. So if I need to see anything, I can look through that, but I don't carry no binos. But if I'm hunting open country, I would never leave home without them. You got to have it now. When I was hunting Wyoming and Arizona areas, I needed binos for the more open country, but not in timber country like I experience here in Idaho in the areas we hunt. So by getting away from where those other hunters are, and I feel really comfortable when I get in those pockets, because I can bugle and display and scream. I can do anything I want to do, and I know nobody's hearing me. And if nothing in that area, I get out of there. I do not say, oh, they're going to be back. I'll spend the next 3 days there. Are you kidding me? In 2 hours, I'm out of there. I'm gone. I'm already into another spot, then another spot, then another spot. And I'm going to find those elk. And of course, in order to do things like that, you guys, you got to be, physically and mentally ready to do it. If you're not, in any kind of shape, this will deter you. You're probably going to do 1 or 2 spots in a day, and then you're going to be taking a day's rest. I'm not kidding you. I see this all the time. And you don't want to do that. So you want to be physically able to not just burn yourself out, but to be able to get into these areas, because I hardly ever hunt 2 miles from my rear. Hardly ever. So I'm not going in deep. And I'm killing the same kind of bulls these other guys are killing. So is my son. Over the years, when you look at the elk we've taken, they're not getting anything any better than us. And they definitely don't have the track record we have. And so, but this is what we're doing. But we call and call to locate. And then we move in silently to get on top of them. And we usually have the elk do the moving. I'm not one of those guys that try to sneak in and sneak to the elk. And generally speaking, it's because the terrain is so rough and noisy, very, very noisy, lots of downfall and brush. So if you're experiencing that when you're in your, over-the-counter units as well, make sure you set up and force the elk to come to you. Be confident that the calling will actually work, because it will. But first of all, get away from those other hunters. Get away from them. Even if it's just through one little mountain range to get away from them. I'm not saying you have to go hunt a different unit, but you got to get away from the pressure. Why do you want to share a spot 4 guys are in? Are you going to go fish in a cove where there's already 4 boats sitting there? I wouldn't do that. I'm going to move on and go find a cove where nobody's sitting in it. And so it's the same thing with hunting. I'm looking for these areas that most people won't venture into. And when I find them on my phone and I find, oh, this is the access, this is the closest access to it, and there's nobody around, nobody parked anywhere, well, I know nobody's in there. They got to get dropped from a helicopter. There's no other way to come in from. So I already know I have this area to myself. And I find spot after spot after spot. Some of them I go into, Taylor, and it's like a dead area. It's like, that's one to scratch off. Other times I get into areas and I'm finding wallows and water and seeps and mush, marshy land, and I'm finding signs. The elk aren't there right there, but I'm finding they were in here. This is an awesome spot. I want to remember that. And those are the things I'll mark on my phone, on base map, or even on a paper map. And those are things I will study, like now. You should see how much I study on base map. I have so much stuff marked on it, but I'm studying areas. And if you don't do those things, you will forget about them, because I do find myself going over and going, oh, wow, wait a minute. I forgot about this spot right here. I got to go check that out. I got 2 of them for this year already that I was looking at that I had completely, escaped my mind, but I'm going to go in because I know they have great potential. So those are the kind of things I'm doing, is I'm finding the little spots that aren't 10 miles in there that nobody ventures into, because they can't hear the elk from those spots. And it's so easy to find them, guys. They're everywhere. So look for stuff like that, and I think you'll see your odds will increase for having some, at least some close encounters.
Yeah, that's great. So question about a little bit later in the season, say there's a herd bull that has a hot cow. What's your approach if you are targeting the herd bull in that situation?
You got to get by the satellites usually. And, that's a pretty vague question. The guy's not being very detailed.
Well, that might be
because,
my bad summary, but
no, I mean, think about it. How many things can be in your way, or come up? I'm just thinking back of all the bulls that we've taken and the mature bulls. And I mean, I can tell you that by far a large majority, and most of them we bring them into us. And even with the hot cow, it doesn't matter. And so we're making them make the last move. I find that when I try to slip in and sneak in, I'm not saying it can't be done, but your odds really plummet hugely, because a lot of times when you got that hot cow in there, all you hear is the bull, and you got tunnel vision on him, and there's cows everywhere. They're there, spikes, sidelights that aren't making any sound at all because they're youngsters, and they're afraid to get, their butt kicked, and so they're slipping in silently, and they're just moving around, and you're slipping in focused on that sound you hear, and these things are just, off to the side, and if they see you, it's game over. You're going to get that, and everything's running. Everything's out of there because you got spotted, you got busted, and they're all running out of there, when it rarely happens if you call. Rarely. Maybe the bull doesn't come in, but they don't run off. They're still there. The point is that I find calling is so much safer. If it doesn't work that round, I can come back in. But I also find when I'm working a herd bull, I got one chance for best results. One chance. When I go in, I better kill that bull or whoever I'm hunting with. And I usually will be doing the calling. I better kill that bull, because he's not going to give me a second and third chance. He knows who I am. He's heard me. He knows what's going on. But the first time around is when he's most aggressive, and when he usually will just charge you. But when I'm working a herd bull, I will tell you that most herd bulls. Okay, can you hear me?
I think we got you, Paul.
Oh, brother, internet. Sorry, guys. I don't know what to tell you.
No, we're just glad to have you back. The guys in the comments were entertaining. Said the government shut you down.
Yeah, right. No,
Okay,
but go ahead. Well, if there's a question, I was probably almost done with that one. I don't know, but maybe.
Yeah.
I see all these questions now coming up on my right-hand side. Holy cow.
Oh, you got them. Okay. Yeah, there's the chat button, and then the question answer only button, and the Q&A only is the one where you can find the questions.
I love the one by Angel up here. Paul probably killed 2 bulls while we were gone. Oh, you guys are funny.
Oh, this is awesome.
Uh,
Well, I can get you a question if you want to dive in here again. Fire it back up.
well, do you know if I had finished the other one? Because I was scrambling trying to get back on, and I just want to make sure that I could. Oh yeah, that was the one about the
Herd
over
bull
the
and your
counter.
tactic there.
Okay, the herd bull and the tactic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe bring us back on that one because we did. I don't know that you'd completed your thought on that one totally.
yeah. Do I ever? No, but I mean, I'll tell you what. I love dealing with those mature bulls, and I could talk on this subject for the next hour. I honestly could, and that's why all this stuff is on the app. If you
Yeah.
go into herd bull tactics and when I'm using a full send challenge or something, because a lot of times when I'm working a herd bull, guys, you think I'm walking in there and just giving them a full send challenge? No, I'm entering the phase. I'm entering the arena, so to speak. And because you got to appreciate when you're dealing with a bull with a hot cow, like the question was, you have to understand there's a lot of bugling going on there. There's like several bulls going, and they're already annoying and irritating this herd bull because of the hot cow or hot cows that he has in his midst. So you have to overcome those things. You got to be that squeaky wheel that needs the grease. If you don't get inside of those satellites, you have very little chance, because what's going to happen if you set up at 200 yards and start calling is you're going to pull in the satellites. I guarantee you, you will pull a satellite in. The herd bull will engage and scream, 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 tell you to get out of there, but he's not leaving. But so the satellites will come in, and what happens then? They usually blow your whole hunt, or you got to shoot one. It's one or the other. Because if you let them go and you don't want them, they're running out. They're letting everything know that there's a threat in the area, and they do. They without barking, they can tell by their body posture, and they're leaving the area that there's an issue, and so they all vacate. But when I'm trying to deal with the herd bull and I'm trying to kill him, like I've shown on the app, where I open the corridor and I get back 300-400 yards and I bugle my way right to him, hard and heavy, just bugle, and that pushes the satellites out of the way. It opens the room that now I can start working the herd bull. I already know the herd bull's not going to come, but it's no more than you trying to bugle your way to a bull all the way to him and let him let you arrow him. Yeah, good luck with that. That rarely happens. He's running. He's keeping the distance all the time. Just like I told the story of the Wyoming bull I called for my son because we thought he was too small from his sound. And so I started bugling him every 50 yards and pushing him out of the area because I knew there was other elk there. So I was trying to push him out because I didn't want him getting in the way and spooking everything else that was ahead of us. So I kept bugling my way to him. Well, I eventually decided to try to call him back because we hit an opening, and it was a large opening. And I thought, well, let's get a look at him. And so I started to call him back, and I actually went to the slow play. And as I did, he stepped into the opening, and he ended up being a 345-inch bull. And he sure had me fooled by his sound because he was just doing nothing. And the next thing you know, he started coming across the opening as I went through the slow play, and I just kept going through it, kept going to it. And he was probably 300 or 400 yards away, and he just kept creeping in and bugling. I couldn't see him. I could hear him. And I just kept going with the slow play. And the minute he got to about 125, I hit him with the full send challenge. And my son shot him at 17 yards. That bull came on a dead run. And so that's what you got. If I would have done that full send challenge, at roughly the 300-yard mark, it would have never had the same outcome. You have to make sure you get him at this certain distance. And let me show you what it is. Here's the sound, and you'll see it on the app, but I'm going to show you anyway. So as I'm setting them up and trading insults, kind of just trade insults with him after I got him worked up, and he's coming. I was going through the slow play, remember, and then I got him worked up to where now he's bugling. And the minute he got into that closer range, I was like, now is the time. And so I kind of just go, and the minute I hit him with that, I don't know what it sounds like on this little microphone, but the minute I hit him with that, it is just a sprint right at me because I've already been dealing with him and already got him worked up, and I'm not leaving his area, and he's trying to get me out. And now I hit him with that. The ultimate sound that a bull will hear, the pant denote excitement. Anytime you hear a bull going, He's getting excited over the situation, whether he's dealing with another bull and wants him out, or he's dealing with a cow and she's not coming as he's asking her to come. He's still dealing with excitement. So when you throw that into the equation along with that hard little grunt and then scream over the top of it, it's game over. And some of the biggest bulls we have ever killed were killed with that sound right there. But it's a timing thing. You have to make sure you're working them with the other sounds that are shown with either the slow play or even through the advertising, where I'm working them up because I'm in his area. But the reason that bull turned around when I did the slow play is all of a sudden I used a cow in the midst right there, where I wasn't doing that before. And if he would have never given me the time of day when I went with the cow sound, and the minute he answered it, and he did, that's when I tried to call him over, which I was trying to show you guys. That call is she uses a sound like that. And the minute I did that, showing interest in that bull, that's when he started engaging with bugling. He's trying to call the cow out of there. And I wasn't going to let the cow come because she's already with a bull. It's part of the slow play. And so as I did that, and then all of a sudden, as he's coming and he's screaming, but he's not coming fast, I hit him with the contact button. And this is urgently asking him, please come on over, come on. And, this guy's not letting me go. This is not an estrus sound. This is a sound when a cow is showing urgency and excitement, wanting these elk to come her way, whether it's cows or a bull, it doesn't matter. In this case, she was talking directly to a bull. So as I played that game, the entire thing, and showed him he had hope for this lady. And then when he got to that point, I hit him with that full send challenge. Boom. Game over. Game over. Here he comes. And it was a self-defense shot. My son shot him with a frontal. And there's just so many stories like that. I mean, there's a ton of them. So when you say, how are you going to kill the herd bull? Am I going to do it that same exact way every time? Not necessarily. Maybe I'll go in there and display as a really bold bull. He doesn't care about nothing. You ain't pushing me around. I may feel that that's what I'm going to entertain. I got in there to 80. I pushed the satellites. There's no cows there because the cows don't stay in the way either as you bugle your way to them. You got to have wind and you stick in the cover. You're not looking for him. You stick to that tight cover and you're screaming your way in, and it separates. It pushes them out of the way. And once you get in there, the bull's getting heated too, but he's not running no more than he's running from the other 4 satellites that are screaming at him. He ain't running from them. He ain't going to run from you. And so you put the pressure on him. And that is when you start going with the full send challenge, when you're close enough. And that usually is all he can take right there. It's like slapping him in his face, and he isn't going to go for it. Now, you could sit there and you could bugle your brains out and probably never call him, but go through that sequence showing your excitement, hit him with the nervous grunt, which is asking for a visual for him. Come on out, get over here. That's what you're doing. And then you're screaming at him, letting him know that he's going to have his hands full if he does. And boom, that he's coming. It makes me excited right now for just wanting to go out there Wednesday, because I'm telling you, I've used this stuff early season. You can make things happen. They start real slow, but man, you can get these things so riled up just in a heartbeat by working them, and not overdoing it in the beginning. No pedal to the metal at first. You got to work it up, and create that dramatic thing that can happen between you and him. And I'll tell you what, you can get him riled and he'll come to you. He's not going to run because he's not running from the others. He's not going to run from you unless they see you or smell you. But that's one of my best tactics for it. But I do make sure that they're in their bedding area, because that's where they want to spend the day. If I catch them in the feeding area, oh my goodness, first hour of daylight, you got to be aggressive really fast because they want to leave the area. This is not where they're going to spend the day. So a lot of times if I get a herd bull in there, and I don't care if I really push him or if I kill him, and I really want to work him right there because it's a good area for a setup, I will try to call his cows from him right then and there, because I know it's important that I've only got a few minutes, because he's going to vacate and go and transition to the bedding area. So I know I got to work him right now. So see, all these little things come into play. The time of day, where is he? Is he in transition and already moving away? And I can't catch him. Am I going to start going to a full send challenge and a slow play? Oh. Hell no. What good is that going to do? He's not going to come all the way back. Now you got to get him where he wants to anchor down for the day. So now I got to follow him. But if I can kill him right there in that feeding area, feeding, watering, whatever he's doing there, that he's been there all night, and they'll usually stay within 45 minutes to an hour if they're not harassed after daylight. I can work them right there. But you got to be aggressive and you got to be fast. You can't go in there and just give a bunch of cow calls and some low stuff that really doesn't mean anything. It's not going to get him riled up. He'll give you a little scream a little bit. You better stay away. And that's about it. And he figures you're done. But you need to ramp it up and get very aggressive with them very fast. And so if you're going to call his cows away, it's like I show you. I know I keep saying the app, and that's why we put it out there. All of this is on it. That's when I usually toss the cow calls in, where the bull is using the cow calls and he's trying to call the cows away, whether they're hot or not. He still wants some cows for his own. And a lot of times you'll hear him kind of go, and see, when he's doing that, he's trying to get the cow's attention to come over to him. He's not just bugling. He's calling to the cows. And you can ramp that up and get very aggressive with it. You can turn it into lip balls and everything else if things start engaging with you. If they don't, and you just start ramping it up and going nuts, 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 a lot of times that ain't going to get you anything. You got to get them involved. You got to get them to report back. And if they don't, let them drift off. Just let them go. Don't think that it's now or never. You're going to have to follow them to the bedding area. And that's usually not the hardest part in the world to find, because they will be somewhat vocal as they're going up there, but don't call your way all the way up there to them. No, let them do the talking. And once you notice all the sounds are coming from one spot, they're there, because otherwise they were moving. But now once you get in there, you're going to notice all the chatter is right there in one area. Now you can set up. Get 150 yards. You don't have to get any closer. And if he doesn't have a hot cow, oh, you'll suck him right in. If he has a hot cow, you're going to have to take the action to him. And so remember that. And the action can be in any of those forms that we just discussed right here.
I like it. That's great. So a couple of questions coming in, Paul, about a bull that has engaged and hangs up. So maybe he hangs up at 60 yards or 100 yards. Maybe the hunter's in a situation where he's having a hard time closing the distance because he's afraid of exposing himself. What are your thoughts there to, further entice a bull that's hung up?
You should have never set up there. You're not going to do any good from that standpoint. You're done. You set up in a spot that was too big of an opening, whether he can see through the trees or whatever, you're not going to get him in. The only way you're going to get that bull in is if you have a collar behind you that's hidden. But if you're a solo guy and you set up in a spot that a bull can come 100, 90, 80, 70, and whatever distance, and he looks over there and sees nothing, I don't care if you turn around and bugle. I don't care what you do. You can make all the stuff up you want. But just from so many worlds of experiences, you've put yourself in a bad position, and you're just, it was a crapshoot. If he came in, that'd be wonderful. Sometimes they do. We've had bulls come in where I could see them coming through the trees, and they never did stop. They just kept coming right to us. But the ones that are a little bit more savvy and set up, because sometimes I will tell you, probably what the guy's getting at is you're out there and you throw out a call and the bull's right on top. You don't even know he's there, and it happens so fast you really don't have a chance to get a good setup. So I understand that too, and it's happened to us. But in most situations, if you have an opportunity to set up, make sure you set up very closely to like we show you in the app. If you don't pick a country like that, your setup terrain where the advantage is the hunter, the bull will stop. He's no longer going into search mode anymore. Not at all. Especially pressured elk, where they've been busted several times. Even though you're a new hunter, he hasn't heard you, so he thinks you might be a real elk. But still, they're very suspicious sometimes because they've been busted. So you got to have an area where you force him into search mode. You cannot allow him to have the luxury of getting to a distance out of your range where he can stop and look through everything and see nothing. That's where they hang up right there. And usually you're going to get that nervous grunt. You could try to cow call, but he's already got your spot pinpointed. He's got you. He already knows exactly where you're at. That's why he stopped where he did. And so what you need to do is you need to avoid putting yourself in those situations. There's no magic sound out there. even though you could say, I'm going to give him a contact buzz because it's asking him to come, but he's looking right there.
Yeah.
He already knows there's no elk standing there. And so all the right sounds mean nothing when your setup is horrible. And that was the one we did with Jason Phelps, where Jason and I agreed that number 2 worst reason people don't kill elk, they have bad setups. Number 1 is bad calling. Number 2 is they have bad setups. And so you'll see a lot of the top guys out there that are taking a lot of elk over a long period of time, a lot of longevity there. You see, we agree on a lot of things, even the tactics. You know, we may call something a little different name here or there, a setup or whatnot. You know, it's like call and stock. I have a call and stock tactic, and it's right there under elk nuts and nuggets. I saw online the other day, I was reading on Instagram, and Remy Warren was explaining how he loves doing this tactic. Exactly the tactic that I've had on the app and books for years. And he calls it the 2-man roll. And it was the call and stock where one guy stays back and does the call and keeps the bull vocal, and the shooter goes up. I call it call and stock because you keep a caller back and a stalker or your shooter goes forward silently to take that bull. And we've done that really well. But you see, so what I'm trying to show you is some guys will maybe have a different phrase. They're still killing a lot of elk and calling them in, but it's really boils down to the same information. You know, there's only so many ways to kill an elk. Some guys are better in their calling setup and their procedure. And why? It's because they put the time in. They put the practice in. They hone their skills. Just like Corey Jacobson is, 11-time world champion. This guy puts the time in. And he calls really well. He's really a good guy. But imagine if you could focus the same kind of time that he puts in. Maybe you could do the same thing. But the point is he does do it. So all these other guys that are killing elk out there, there's only like 2 handfuls out there that really put a lot of elk down. You're going to notice they're doing a lot of the same things. And so, you know, sink your teeth into those things right there because they really will help you.
Oh, that's great. So we have a question, Paul, to give us a look into a typical day hunting with the elk nut. I know you've kind of given us a lot of that already, kind of summarized through your discussion, but you know, start to finish, a day in the elk woods, what's that look like?
New areas, more calling. Areas I'm familiar with, I have designated spots I call from because I know the country and I know if the elk are there, I need to call from here because after being in it for so many years, I realize I never get any report back, you know, from a lot of these other areas as I'm going in. But if it's new country, I'm calling right from the truck. And it's because I don't know where they're at. And maybe they are not very far in there. And so you're going to find that if you're hunting with me, I rarely make a cow sound unless I absolutely need it. I'm going to be using the bugle just absolutely as the main tool because I'm trying to find them. I'm hunting timber country. And so I'm not glassing anything. And you're going to hear me calling like this right here. That's how you're going to hear me calling. And I rarely ever mix it up when I'm locating and moving like that. You're not going to hear me go through 5 different kind of bull sounds. Or if they were there, they would have answered it already. And why does this work? Okay, like you say, here's my strategy in my head. You're hunting with me, and I'll even explain it to you as we're walking, is anytime you get near elk that are living in an area, the last thing they want to do is share it with another bull. They don't want to do it, especially mature bulls. They won't share their area. They're going to report back and tell you to get out of there. This area is taken, move on, whether he's by himself or whether he has cows. He doesn't care. He will let you know that you're not welcome in that area. And so that's what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find them. I'm trying to get close enough to those areas. Some bulls will answer you a mile away that they don't like the fact that you're getting too close to their area. Other bulls, you have to be within 250 yards of them or you'll walk right by them and they won't say anything. And so I'm constantly calling because I don't know if I need to be, you know, that mile away, a half a mile, a quarter mile, hundreds of yards. I don't know. And especially on a new area. So I'm calling, but I'm so confident in my calling that I'm sounding like an elk that I'm not pushing them out. I'm not running them anywhere. It's they report back and they let me know where they're at, whether they realize that or not. It doesn't matter to me. The point is that they, just like that bull responded to the cow bugles on the 16th. He gave away his position. I really firmly believe I would have had a 90% chance of killing him that day. All I would have went in there was got to 150, and I would have started advertising right there. And I promise you, he would have came in, because he does not know who I am, and he's going to want to know. He's going to size me up. He wants to know where I might fit in the stage of the pecking order once the rut starts kicking in. He doesn't know me, and so he's going to like, who the heck? And that's how they come in. They're not coming in for a fight. They're coming in like, who are you? And so now they want to know by your sight, by your sound, and by your smell. They want to check you all out, just like dogs do when they meet new dogs around each other. You know, they smell their butts for a reason. You know, they want to know what they had for dinner or whatever it is, you know. I mean, the point is elk will do similar things to recognize and associate with one another of who they are. And so this is what I'm doing when I'm calling that much. And I'm going to cover ground. It doesn't mean I'm going to cover a lot of ground, but I'll probably cover these days. I mean, I used to be one of them 6 to 10 mile guys. Seriously, by noon. I mean, we just go like crazy.
Covered ground.
I'm 68 now, so I'm like, you know what? I don't need to do that. I can usually get it done by going half those distances now and being more patient and moving slower and not sweating so much. I hate sweating when I'm out there. I absolutely hate it, but I do. But I mean, I just try to move slow, calm down. But most of the time, you're going to end up getting into elk. And if I get into sign and you're with me and we're like, oh, look at these signs, look at the tracks. Okay. And I'm looking at the terrain. I'm like, okay, they're not bedding here. There's nothing here really good. And so I find the tracks for the majority of it, and I start following them. Just stay on their tracks. Sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 of them. They're dispersing left and right, but mainly they're going down this direction. And then they hook back up. And you're going to find that as you watch elk move through the woods. They don't just stay in this one little trail system. They kind of dinking around. But you'll notice that the majority are all doing this. And until I start getting into a timbered area, or I start looking and going, okay, now I need to really slow. They're right in here. I know I can hear them. If they sound off, they're here somewhere, but they're not saying anything. So a lot of times before I call, because I know they're already there, is I will sit my butt down and I'll wait there for 30, 40 minutes. I won't move. I'll just sit there. And all of a sudden I'll hear a little meow, or I'll hear a little just something small. And I'm like, okay, they're right there. Now I know where they're at. So I'm kind of in a little bit of opening, but I'm hidden. This is not a good calling spot. But I was up there to hear. So now, if whatever the wind's doing, I'm going to get it in my favor. I'm going to make my way down. I'm going to get in the timber where I can set up. And I'm going to go. I forget the cow calls. I could care less about them. It doesn't mean I won't ever give one. It depends on the time of the year. If I think it's getting more toward the 15th and I give a cow call and a bull answers it, most of the cases, that's a dead bull. And it doesn't mean I'm calling him at the cow call. I'm going to call him with the bugle most of the time. But the point is the bull gets very defensive if another bull steps in as he's trying to call a cow to him. So I'm going to move in. I'm going to probably get in as close as I dare. That could be 60, 70 yards. But I'm keeping the tight cover to me and making a few mews as I'm moving in, like letting them know I'm coming. And then I'm stopping right in there. And usually I'll start raking that a bull has moved in. And I'll rake a little bit more, kind of a really downplay of the slow play. And with a few mews, and I'll start raking again. And I'll let out a few sounds that a bull's right there. But you got to do it subtly, guys. When you're giving them, a lot of times, this is the sound I'm making. I'm doing a little bit of raking. I'm letting them know a bull's there with the cow. And I'm kind of going. Little stuff like that. You don't have to get crazy. And you know what? He can't size you up. And you're giving those, and don't you think you don't have his attention? This is stuff I've done for years. You give him those little sounds, and you know he knows there's a bull there. So what if you heard that and it was 70 yards away? You're like, are you thinking immediately that's a guy? No, I mean, it's like little stuff like that guys don't think. And a lot of times, if a bull will make a little bit of a sound, I'll wheeze through my bugle a little bit. I'll kind of go. And then maybe I'll give a couple more of those little, but see, bulls will do that. They make these little sounds when they're next to a cow like that. And so you give them those sounds that what they're hearing fits that situation and knows it's a real elk over there. So I'm fooling them at their own game that they do to me as I'm sneaking in, moving in, and trying to call them. They'll give you all these little sounds. So, think of those things. That's how I'm going to try to kill that bull. I'm not walking in there and getting 70 yards and going, that's not the situation for it. Now, if it was an aggressive situation and we were firing back and forth and I ran at it and I hit him real hard, stomping, raking, that's a different story. Sometimes I'm working a bull like that, but this is more of a much more subtle situation. You're just letting them know there's an elk there. And this is worth coming investigating. This cow, I called her all the way to 70 yards, and another bull intervened on me. He's right there. And, he's making all the right sounds. This is an elk. This is not an imposter blowing the yodel bugle out there that he's heard for 100,000 times. You make these little sounds, guys, little stuff, and they hear it. You've already broken the ice. They know you're there. So, those are the things that I do. And I'll also actually use those exact sounds you'll see on the app, on the advertising sequence. And then I'll pick it up. I like starting real low and then ramp it up and showing my excitement little by little by little. And next thing you know, I'm going in with, I'll start with these half-hearted low little bugles, hardly not even a half a second long. But after a few minutes, I'm working myself up. And so many times you'll get something to chime off, or he engages and now you got something going. But those are the way that I attract elk. So if you're going to hunt with me, you are going to hear me doing things like that once I get into areas that I know there's elk. You're not going to hear me just giving a classic TV bugle everywhere I walk and, oh my God, the elk just come running to Paul. It's not like that. You have to create your own excitement and make things happen. And so you would see things like that. It's not necessarily covering a ton of country, but we're going to cover a ton of sounds, a ton of sounds. And if I get action from the elk, I'm only going to use sounds back to him that he expects to hear. To me, that's extremely important, and it has worked for us for many years. So you would be in that situation right there, not just blasting bugles and cow calls, but actually carrying on and talking back and forth as if two guys were talking.
Thanks, Paul. That's super helpful. So, question about bedding areas and whether a bull's gonna take cows back to a pre-rut bedding area. So maybe they've located where the bulls are in the late summer when they're bachelored up. Are the bulls moving to new areas to find the cows, or do they tend to hang out in kind of the similar area during the rut?
No, they do. But anytime a calving area comes into place, it's the cows taking them back there, not the bulls. The bulls aren't even there when they're calving. So it would be the cows that are taking them back. It's just like the cows, they pretty much, for the most part, when there's not a big issue, they run the show as far as leading them, taking them to feeding, taking them to water. This doesn't mean a bull would never do that, but most of the cases it's not. It's the cows running the show, the lead cow. Now, if you were hunting and you called and you did something and a bull caught your movement or attention or winded you, he can now whoom and everything goes with him. But in most cases, when things are just under a normal sequence, it's the cows that are doing that. But as far as calving areas, now here's the problem with calving areas. These days, everybody knows about them. I mean, it's not anything new. And most calving areas are all within easy driving distance. They're easy to get to, because when cows start calving in June, they're following the snow line. Most of these areas are full of snow. They're not just going up to the high country. That's not what they're doing. If you hunt Colorado at 11 and 12,000 feet, they're not calving there. There's too much snow, so they're way down low. Here in Idaho, the calving is probably closer to 5,500 to 6,500 feet, depending on what side of the mountain they're on, because the snow leaves the south sides, east sides, and whatnot more than the north. So they're following the snow line, and in June, there's a lot of snow here, as well as other states. So, but a lot of those areas, they're not anything. They're a mile from a road, sometimes closer. So to just sink all your teeth in or your eggs in one basket saying, I'm going to hunt the calving areas because the cows will bring them back to it. Well, they'll be very short-lived, because just like if you have bedding areas and somebody else hunted them, they're gone now. That's it. They're gone. Say you hunted a wallow, you have a camera on a wallow, and you've had it on there for 4 weeks, and you got the same two bulls hitting this thing. It's awesome. And then somebody goes over there to hunt it, doesn't pay attention to the wind, and runs them out of there, and you have no idea they were there. Those elk are gone. Maybe it was you that ran them out, but they're gone. They will not return. They're done. It could be 2 weeks before they come back, or they got killed off by somebody else, or they just moved to another area where cows are coming into estrus. So you see, all these things come into play, and that's one of the reasons why I really am starting to like a lot more the early season. All these things are taken out of the equation. Now it's up to you. You get the first chance at these elk, and so when you get into an area, if you have 2 or 3 really good areas, and when the season starts to the middle of the week, like this year, it's like no hunters. Most guys work. I'm retired. I'm very fortunate. So I'm going to be able to hunt these areas before anybody really gets into them, because these guys won't show up till the weekend, and it opens on a Wednesday. So, I'm not saying it's like that every year, but it's things to consider. But a lot of the states I've hunted, and there's been 8 of them, I do notice that first week, you don't have nowhere near the hunters as you will from the 10th through the 15th and to the end of the month. They just pile in because they know that's when most of the bugling starts. But once you start learning all these other little tactics that bring bulls in, and cows, it doesn't matter, but I hunt bulls, is you're going to see that early season is every bit as productive if you're going to use good calling strategies, or you're going to have areas where you can put a tree stand. They're very, very effective. It's just I'm not a tree stand hunter, but I do know if I wanted to be one, it would probably be the easiest way to kill an elk. It really would be. It's location, location, location. You find a good spot, you only hunt it when the wind is right, and I'll tell you, you will kill elk. It's money, whether it's a destination spot or whether it's major 2 or 3 major trails leading into one going to a destination spot. It doesn't always have to be the feeding area or a water or source or water hole where the wind can be iffy, because a lot of these water areas are on flat areas. Again, look on the app. It will show you the wallow areas. We show you wallows that are getting hit. But look at the terrain. Most of the wallow isn't sitting on a hill like that. It's sitting flat. And so, man, you only got so much time, and then you got to get out of there. Because if your wind goes to where they're bedded before they get there, you are dead. They won't come back. They're gone. So that's why a lot of times when you see it on the app there is that I will, if you're going to hunt the wallows, follow the trails they're coming in. Their tracks are all going one way. When they leave, they usually go on another. They don't turn around and go back that same way. Their tracks leaving will be faced one way. Their tracks coming in are faced another way. So find the ones they're coming in on, and most of the time you look at the terrain where they're bedded probably, and you can tell which way they're actually coming. A camera helps to alleviate the guessing, but move back on the trail where they're coming in. If it's an evening hunt, you're going to probably want the other way. But the point is get back off that trail a few 100 yards, 100 yards, whatever it is, where the wind is predictable, whether you need to be below it or above it, whatever the wind's doing. And now you catch them as they come through. You see, and you don't even need a call. They're coming through, period. So, but my point is you got to use your head when you're out there. You can't just see the pot of gold right there and you got to sit on it. No, sometimes you have to get back and use your head that this is going to be my best strategy. And with a camera, like I say, a lot of times it can really tell you what time of day that the activity is happening. And it's the same thing. I have a beginner's thing on the app there that talks about if you catch them off the road and you're bugling and they're answering and you get up there and they're already gone, look at the area really well. Because there's probably going to be, that's where they're feeding, they're coming back in the evening. Find the trails they're using, get the wind right, and sit there. They're going to come right back to it. Same thing in the morning. When you figure out that, they were already there. Now get out there an hour earlier. You went up there when they're already gone. Find the trail they're leaving. You're going to see their tracks. It's going to be obvious. Find it and get up there. Even if it's dark, get ahead of them 200 or 300 yards and sit there. Get the wind right and let them come traipsing right by you. You see, it's simple things like that. I just love calling so much. I really don't want to ambush them. I mean, I could do this too. So, but a lot of people, they're just trying to kill an elk, and so those are some of the things that you can take into consideration is you don't have to sit at the destination unless you have really good wind for as long of a stay that you're there. Other than that, use your head and move away from it because they're still the same elk that are there or coming by you or leaving. It's the same ones. So think of those little things. Those little things are really tricky and can work well. I see all the time. I got this area that I see where the elk come up off the bottom and they cross these dirt roads, and you can see their trails. They're just beat up. I have put cameras on them, and early on, it's just cow after cow after cow, maybe some spikes, but no bulls. But the bulls will eventually get there. But if you're just looking for any elk and you can't go far because of inability or age or whatever, a lot of times all you do is find those little spots where they're crossing the road. You'll see their tracks. And most of those areas are not a great road and nobody's hunting them. They're either they're going to destination spots. And so you see these little areas coming up the hill, across and back up a bank, and you'll see just trails of fresh tracks. Get over there. Those elk are going to use it every day and every evening. And, as the season progresses, if those elk don't get hooked up too fast and moved off, you'll have bulls coming through there as well. And I have quite a few little areas like that, but they're more of the skid road stuff, not a really heavily traveled where a car's going by regularly. It's more like 3 or 4 in a day may go by it, and never that early. So, think of all those little things. I mean, they can all connect the dots.
Absolutely. No, that's great. Well, Paul, maybe a couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. But we've had a few questions about night calling. I know you've mentioned it a little bit. What's your strategy with locating elk at night?
It's as simple as that. Once again, I'm sure I'm sounding redundant, but there's a whole video on it on the pro version of the app of how I do it, what I do. But basically, I'm calling to locate. There's times if I know my area, I don't have to worry about driving it in the daytime and making notations either on a map or on my phone or putting a landmark on the side of the road that most people would never recognize. I don't stack rocks. Any hillbilly is going to find out you heard elk there, you saw elk, or there's something going on. I do something much more inconspicuous. I'm not going to say what it is because then you'll know if you're in my area. So find your own little niche. Seriously. That only you will recognize. Don't put red flags up. I mean, don't do stuff where people are going to go, hey, I see these rocks piled all the time. Oh, somebody knows there's an elk, or they saw something cross, or they heard one down there last year. And so they make these little things, but don't do that. Those little monuments will be everywhere. So if I don't know the area well, then I will go and have some spots, because when it's dark, it doesn't look the same. When I'm night calling, I usually will call in areas where my sound broadcasts really well. Really, really well. Yes, when I drive up, I shut my motor off. I've asked people ask me this. Do you shut your car off? Well, of course I shut my truck off. I already can't even hear hardly. I got to shut the car off. Half the time I bugle and my son goes right there. And I go, what? He goes, just a bull right there. Just answer. And what? I never even heard him. So I don't know how many elk when I'm by myself, which is most of the time, that I don't even hear. I go right by them. I don't even think my hearing's that bad. I mean, I hear plenty of bulls, but so I'm stopping my car, guys. I know the areas because I went driving it in the evening and have a bunch of locations where I want to call, and there's no camps, no hunters, and I can see my sound's going to go out a long way up or down or whatever. So I've located them in a new area I'm unfamiliar with, and I may have 10, 15 spots like that, and nothing closer than a half a mile from one from the other, because your sound carries. And I'll just keep doing it until I find an elk. If I know the area, I will do the same thing, but I don't have to map them. I don't have to put markers down anywhere. And once I find areas like that, and especially over the counter is what I hunt mostly, I use these every year. And these elk are in the same spots. I find elk in the same spot every year. Same spots. If they're there. If they're not there, they're somewhere else. But the point is they will end up being there. So I really count on that, that the elk are using certain areas, it's just a yearly thing. You can count on it. It's money. And so it's very important. And usually I will give 2 bugles. Once in a blue moon, I may give a third one. If it's early season, I don't get real creative. I usually will just throw out a bugle. Sometimes it'll just be the cow bugle. And remember, when a cow bugles, she'll bugle 2 or 3 times real fast. Not every time, but I like doing it that way because it usually denotes a cow, period. And so I want to differentiate that when I'm trying to locate and I want a bull to respond to me, as I want to make sure that he knows this is a cow. And if I feel that it's push comes to shove and they're just not answering anything, that's when I go to that call. I just don't do it all the time because in most cases I can just bugle and they respond. And yeah, most of them are way up there. They're not sitting next to the road. So, I will do things like that as the season progresses. I may go into some lip balls off the road because the elk are getting more aggressive. I don't know if I need a light here, getting harder to see, but
there we go.
The elk are getting more aggressive and they're answering much more rapidly. So I may go to some, lip ball type of a bugle right off the bat, just to show high energy, excitement. I've got cows down here, and when you do that, a lot of time it shock bugles them. And just boy, those just answer where maybe they won't answer a nonchalant, high little whistle. And so, then I get more creative as the season goes on. But I will do all these things at night. And we've killed a whole lot of elk. And so is the other elk nut guys by night bugling, by calling them. And most of the time it's an hour to an hour and a half before daylight. I used to go out in the middle of the night, but the older I got, it was like, it's such a pain in the butt to try to go back and get a couple hours sleep. I'm already tired, even though I sleep on the mountain midday. Who doesn't?
Right,
that's part of hunting, man. You look forward to that.
That's right. That's
you
the
really
best.
do. So as far as night calling, I call 2 or 3 times at the most. If nothing answers within, literally, honestly, 30, 45 seconds, I move on. I don't sit there and wait and hammer it and hammer. And I don't cow call at all. None. All I do is bugle, move, bugle, move, bugle, move until bam, there they are right there. And, I've given that out for years. And now I hear it a lot of times in the areas I hunt. So I know these guys are doing it. But you know what? It's public land. Somebody's got to hunt those elk. Anyway, what was the next question? So you got that one.
So we got that one. And then there's a question about elevation, where the elk are hanging out during the season. I imagine that varies depending upon the state that one's hunting. But do you have any guidance on that?
I know that where I hunt, 6,500 feet to 6,800 feet is the ticket. No question in my mind. Now, if you took those stats to Colorado, you probably wouldn't kill anything, right. Because it's a different atmosphere over there. Over there, I think most of them are killed between 10 and 12, honestly, because that's where they all live. Doesn't mean there's none lower, but we're talking about, where most of them
more concentrated.
And where are you going to be more apt to hear them or see them? It's usually something like that. But when I've hunted Montana, I've hunted Idaho, I've been to Oregon, even right there when I was in Arizona, Wyoming, all those are the same. I was probably between 6,500 and 7,000 the entire time. There were times we were higher, don't get me wrong, but anytime I've ever hunted other than Colorado, 8,000 feet, I get into nothing. It's like nothing. But if I stay anywhere in that 6 to 7, 73, I'm even going to push it. That is where I find the elk, right there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's the majority of them. And so I really try to focus on those things. I like burns, but only the edges of the burns, but I'm not going to focus all my attention on it. I'm going to focus some of my attention on it to test the waters. They're not there, I'm gone. I don't care what the internet says about hunting all the burns because all the elk are feeding in there after a year or two, blah, 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 because everybody is around them. So I try to find stuff that's more away. And it's once again, as it came back to the earlier question, if I find a good burn and there's hunters around, I keep moving. I'm gone. I'm not going to go in there and beat my head against the wall over there and compete against guys that whether they know what they're doing or don't, if they already beat me there, it's theirs. And so I don't mess around with them. I'm going to go find my own spot. And most of the time they hunt those elk in a day or two, they're pushed all out of there anyway. So you might as well just go find those little secluded areas they're going to. And that's where my phone comes in. I look at that phone. These guys are all in here. Oh, those elk are going to be right over here somewhere. And so, just use some common sense. What would you do if somebody was chasing you and trying to kill you? And they're all hunting in these areas. And you're
Get
like,
away.
If I go over here, that's not where they're at. And they're rarely anybody. I'm going to go over there. You see, and so elk do the same thing. They're trying to get away from the pressure. They're not going, look at all those hunters. Let's all live right there, and eat. And that's not what they do. They try to get away from it. So, with things like that, it's just use your noggin a little bit and your technology. Take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never even thought of doing anything like this 10 years ago. It was just running around,
right?
Like a lot of guys did back then. But now you have all these things that everybody's using, and it's worth it. One thing before we quit, I wanted to say a big question I get a lot, and it's and I'm going to throw this name out there because the guy has been super helpful and a really nice guy. Is guys will ask me, they've seen my son and I with our packs, and we have a pistol in it. We carry 9mm in our pack on our packs, and I can't tell you how many guys have asked, "What is it? What holster are you using? How do you get that?" Mine, I'm using a pack from Ivory Holsters, and my pack is an XO. Paul's is too, but we have an Ivory holster that Gabriel made us, and he actually sent them to us to try them out, and we've had them a couple years now. Actually, now I think we have like 6 of them. But those things, I don't know if you ever tried one, Taylor, but they are absolutely awesome. For if you're
I
hunting a
have
lot
one
of wolf,
too.
yeah, they're amazing, and they have a little.
They are.
They have a screw on the bottom so that when your pistol locks in, you can tighten that thing. You can't get it out. I don't have it that tight on mine.
That's right.
I click it. I think I'm on my 3rd year with this one,
Mhm.
actually, and I have never had one single issue with it. And I'll tell you what, if you guys, and I've told every one of them have asked me that, and I thought, you know what, during this podcast, I'm going to say something because I get that question so much. If you're looking for a pistol that goes to your pack, and I mean about any pack, you got to check out this Ivory holster guy. I mean, they are absolutely awesome. And well, I didn't even know Taylor had one.
Yeah, I met him at
Things
the
are
Hunt
amazing.
Expo in person, Paul. I met him this February, and we actually went to dinner with Gabriel. And he
I
and
didn't
his
know
wife,
that.
he and his wife, they run that business together. And he quit a job and does it full time, and is just putting out a great product. I agree.
Yeah. No. Hey, matter of fact, I
And
have
he's
my
a big
pack
Elk
here.
Nut fan.
Hang on, I'm gonna grab my pack. I gotta show him. Okay, I know not everybody's interested in it, but I also know there's plenty that are. And here's my XO pack, and here's that pistol that sits on it. Let's see if you can see it. Am I too close? Here it is, right here.
We're just catching the top edge.
Okay, right there.
There we go.
And it's right on my belt.
Yep.
And this is the screw I was talking about. It's right here that you tighten. But this pistol will not come out. I mean, I have fallen. I've hit logs. I've went everywhere. But that always stays on it. I never, ever take that off of there. So when I'm going elk hunting, if I want to take my pistol out, I can take it out. But most of the time, I do not. I leave it in there. It stays in there all the time. And no matter where I go, I'm ready with it. But I just wanted to say something about it because I've had so many questions that I'm not saying there's not other holsters out there, but I'm not looking for another one. This thing works. What do you think, Taylor? Honestly, what do you think?
Absolutely love it. I've had it for 3 seasons as well.
Yeah.
I've got a little 9mm in mine that I pack around and have never had an issue.
Yeah,
it's been great. And we run mostly XO, but we've tried it on a couple of other packs, and it fits on other packs too if people don't have XO.
Yeah. So hopefully, this will answer some of the questions. If somebody is looking for something like that, that's very comfortable. You don't even know it's there. And my arm never hits it. It doesn't get in the way of my bugle. I mean, it's pretty awesome. So anyway, hopefully you appreciate that, Gabriel, because it was definitely worth a shout out to you.
Well, that's good and well deserved. Gabriel, I know he's been a good referral source for us too, and talked a lot about the app, and good person. Yeah. Well, Paul, do you have any parting advice? Any last kind of thoughts to share with the group before we wrap up tonight?
Don't be afraid to call. You guys, you got to call. And I see that more and more every year where guys are intimidated to use their bugle, especially when I say calling, I'm referring to a bugle. They just think they're going to run everything off the mountain. They really do. They think that hunters are going to come running in, elk are going to leave. And if guys would just have the faith that it works, and the only way you're going to have that faith and confidence is through your practice. If you know you're weak in that area, you're not going to use it. If you know that you're weak about using your driver when you golf, you're not going to use it. You have to practice. You have to put the time in and build that confidence. And the only way you're going to do it with bugling is understanding all those little sounds like I was sharing earlier. You don't want to just practice the driver. You have to know how to putt. You have to know how to do your irons. It's the same with the bugle. You have to know how to make those little the little, it's like a chuckle, just singular. Then you want to be able to moan with it and make some little howls. Those are really, really important sounds that elk will make that differentiate you from a real hunter as to what they usually hear from other elk, especially satellite that harassing them and bothering them in their areas. So I'm telling you, the bugle is the ticket here. And don't think just because I'm telling you that everybody's going to do it now. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about everybody else. Find your own little areas, just like I'm doing. Find your own spots. Be comfortable with using that bugle and use the cow call only when you have to. Don't overdo it because you think every bull out there wants a stinking cow. They do not. They all don't want a bull in their area, though. But most of the time, they'll tolerate the cows around, like I said earlier, until they come into estrus and they get that scent in their nose, especially the first 10 days or so of the season. They just don't care. And that's when those bulls are extremely vulnerable. So, to me, have a lot of fun out there. Enjoy it. At 68, I always wonder now, how many Septembers do I have left? How many, fruitful ones do I have left? So don't take those things for granted, guys. Hunt with your family, with your kids, your wife, your friends. Cherish all those memories around the campfire. Don't make this such a job that you're disgusted because maybe you don't feel the tag, because a lot of times the best things we'll remember are those memories of just the hunt and enjoying each other's company. I can remember a lot of hunts where no animals were taken, and I remember those because of the people I was with, and just the enjoyment and the fun and the joking and the trials and errors that we all go through. So I look forward to those. I love sitting around a campfire. If you guys aren't having a campfire night, you guys are getting a bit too serious. I mean, I'm telling you, do it, have it, because those are part of the hunt. It really is. Just like you're looking at the lakes out there and the beautiful mountains when you're out there, and terrain that most people on earth will never see. And elk hunting is just a plus. That's a bonus to be able to do it while you're out there. But take advantage of all the other things out there that are so cool that, again, most people on earth are not experiencing. So elk hunting is not just a hunting thing, same as deer hunting. It's who we are, and it can be part of our life and something that we look forward to every year. So you guys stay safe out there, and thank you very much for sitting in here with us and listening to us babble on.
Paul, that was powerful. Thank you. I think you summed it up so well. Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for the support. Yeah.
And there was like 800 or so of you guys. So that's awesome, and congratulations, Shane. Wow, that's pretty neat. Well, good night, everybody. Have a good evening.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody. Good night.